The digital revolution is transforming our lives from smartphones and apps to new ways of working. But what about the environment? Can digitization help that too? We also look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic as it shuts down much of the world. Welcome to a new edition of Eco Africa. I'm Neo Taigbe from Lagos, Nigeria.
And hello from me too, Sandra Twinobryo here in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. Well, Uganda, like the rest of the world, is still battling the coronavirus. And while the lockdown is slowly being lifted from sector to sector, we are still registering quite a number of new cases. Still, the show must go on, and we've put together an interesting set of stories for you. We visit a man in Ethiopia who helped bring clean water to his community. We also look at ways that digitalization can be good and also bad for the environment. And follow Kenyan farmers who've discovered a lucrative side crop raising silkworms. COVID-19 has caused us to change the way we do many things, like shopping, for instance. Many wonder if it is still safe to do shopping at busy outdoor markets or even on crowded streets. That is partly why online shopping is common nowadays. Whether for clothes or groceries, it is becoming booming these days, also here in Africa. One company in Zimbabwe, for example, delivers fresh produce and other items directly to your home. Now that helps curb the spread of the virus as well as reduce the amount of food waste.
Zimbabwe may be in lockdown, but there isn't much social distancing at Harare's oldest market. And a 2-hour cut to business hours means a large portion of the produce can't be sold and is going to waste.
Working here, we are at risk of catching and spreading the virus, but we have few options. We need the money.
In order to bring fresh produce directly to the customer, Kuda Musasiwa founded the startup Fresh in a Box. Customers can order fruit and vegetables boxes online and have no need to be at the crowded markets. Before the pandemic, a team filled about 120 orders a day. Now it's more than 1,000. At $15 for a standard vegetable box, it's still a bit of a luxury.
People having access to the internet now means that they can interact directly with us as farmers, directly with us as retailers, and they can get their food directly to their homes. And we can assist in getting rid of the vast amounts of produce that we have on our farms.
Ready-packed boxes are delivered each day in and around Harare. 12-hour delivery shifts guarantee fresh products. For many customers, online shopping is not only convenient, but also offers a sense of security.
It was an easy way to get your vegetables, especially when you're on lockdown. It means you don't have to go and fight with the shops and all the social distancing and the queuing and the hassles. It feels safe.
The Fresh in a Box startup works with 190 farmers in Zimbabwe. Their farm produce is harvested as per order and can be delivered just in time.
One of the ethos of our company is to make sure that we have a very low carbon footprint in everything that we do. Our packaging, for example, are reused boxes from repurposed boxes from other industries. So it's been a great way of us keeping costs down, keeping our box cost price down, and also keeping the environment clean.
Shopping online for fresh produce is not only convenient during the pandemic, but the sustainable way of managing the supply chain helps also to minimize food waste and food loss.
The story from Zimbabwe is an example of one where digitalization can contribute to environmental protection and good health, but our growing reliance on powerful computers and datasets is also having some negative impact on our ecosystems, with a growing number of internet users expecting anything, anytime, anywhere. Digitalization's ecological footprint will place a greater pressure on our natural systems. Let's take a look at a few facts.
Online activity is soaring and gigantic server farms are using more and more electricity. Digitalization is leaving a huge environmental footprint. Today, it's already responsible for 3 to 4% of global carbon dioxide emissions. That's more than all the EU's waste industry produces each year. Together, cloud computer, digital payment systems and online streaming require huge amounts of electricity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of children and young people were affected by school closures. Many of them had to take classes as well as socialize online. Now, over 50% of the world's population has access to the internet. In 2019 alone, the number of internet users grew by 7%. If this trend continues, digitalization will account for almost 8% of CO2 emissions by 2025. We're on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. An ever-increasing number of processes are being automated in sectors like manufacturing and healthcare. All that will require even more internet traffic. The energy transition to renewables is also a digital transition. Green tech startups are working on energy-efficient digital infrastructure to make production processes and energy consumption more sustainable. Digital data helps us better understand climate change and other environmental impacts on our ecosystems. Intelligent traffic management not only reduces the amount of harmful polluters on the streets, but can help to prevent gridlock. Digital technology could reduce global CO2 emissions by 20%. Digitalization can be green, but we need to get more of our power from sustainable sources to prevent digital technology from further increasing harmful emissions.
And now to another digital solution. In this era of mass-produced goods, you don't always know exactly what you are buying. A lot of cosmetics, for example, contain microplastics. But what can you do to avoid them?
Well, this week's Doing Your Bit looks at an app that lets the consumers check the content of the product before they buy them. According to the app's developer, it can provide detailed information on about 31 million different products. Maybe your shampoo is on that list.
The shelves of shops and supermarkets are lined with products packaged in plastic. But there are microplastics hidden inside some products too, especially cosmetics. So how can consumers stay clear of products containing the tiny bits of plastic? Help is now at hand with an app called CodeCheck. A barcode scan reveals a complete list of a product's contents, as well as an overall rating of its eco-friendliness.
The ratings in the CodeCheck app are actually based on experts like Greenpeace, WWF, or Friends of the Earth. Also, we have our own scientific team who rates products based on latest scientific research.
Available since 2016, the Swiss startup developed the app in cooperation with the environmental group Friends of the Earth. And in addition to cosmetics, it can also be used to examine the ingredients in processed foods and cleaning products, giving health-conscious shoppers more confidence in their purchasing choices.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
Modern digital technology can be very useful in improving farming methods too. A young agronomist in Côte d'Ivoire has developed a way to deploy drones to make farming more efficient and also more environmentally friendly. His company has specialized in what he calls precision agriculture. Let's go see this.
This tomato plantation is monitored not by farm workers but by a drone over an area the size of a small football pitch east of the Ivorian port city of Abidjan. The drone idea was launched via a local startup set up by Abubakar Karim. He wants to use the new surveillance technology to make traditional farming more productive and more sustainable.
Let's say a plot of land has an irrigation problem on one of its 5 hectares. That's something you can't make out with your own eyes, but a drone can identify the area in question, and that makes it easier to resolve the problem and at the same time increase your yield.
After setting off, the drone uses its camera to create digital aerial maps. These are in turn relayed to a computer down on the ground to detect irregularities or other issues on plantations. It's part of a new IT-assisted form of farming called precision agriculture.
It means that we can use the technology to determine exactly where plants have been afflicted by a disease. And instead of treating an entire parcel of land, we can focus on the specific area actually affected.
That's also good for the environment. Fewer pesticides mean healthier soil and less pollution on plantations. Farmer Fabrice Ngwetia began working together with the startup about a year ago. In addition to the environmental aspect, he also sees another crucial advantage for his country's agricultural industry.
We
have a lot of land and a lot of options for expanding our farmland, but it's physically demanding work and very tricky to implement, which has put a lot of people off farming. But this technology is extremely efficient, and it could also tempt young people back to farming. Much of the deforestation is done to provide space for huge new plantations. Ivory Coast is the biggest cocoa producer in Africa. According to figures from the World Bank, over the last half a century, Ivory Coast has lost around 80% of its forests.
We are fighting deforestation. A lot of farmers think they need 20 or 30 hectares in order to ensure a big harvest. But we show them how they can get similar yields with 1 hectare or just 5,000 square meters.
A little later, the second drone is ready to take to the skies. It has almost 10 liters of liquid pesticide on board, which will be applied exactly where it is needed. Deploying drones also prevents damage to the plant's roots from the heavy farming machines normally used.
With 1 drone, you can spray 2 hectares in under 12 minutes. With conventional means, you'd need an entire day to cover 1 or 2 hectares.
He now has a dozen-strong team of permanent staff. Around 40 customers are already using the farm's digital solution, although attracting a clientele wasn't easy at first.
The farming sector has been around for a long time. When new technologies are introduced, it takes a while for people to be convinced of the benefits.
With the cost being a major factor, monitoring from seed to harvest costs between 4,000 and 8,000 euros, which for many farmers initially seems a big outlay. But with the startup's clientele now extending to Mali and Senegal, the drones will be touching down further afield too.
How much do you know about silkworms? Yes, they are caterpillars of a moth native to China and are used to produce silk. For centuries, most silk was produced in Asia, but over time, the practice spread. Now, as the climate crisis is forcing farmers to find alternatives to food crops, silk farming is gaining popularity in countries like Kenya.
Silkworms, they love the leaves of mulberry trees, and they are giving hope to farmers in Kenya. Due to the extreme weather patterns of recent years, Newton Owino has turned to silkworm farming.
This is the 26th day, and you can see the silkworm are already spinning. They are making cocoons. In other words, they have already reached the stage that we call pupal stage. Yeah, so as they spin, we harvest our cocoons.
The former senior researcher at the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology started the silkworm venture in 2015.
Whatever is left for us in form of cocoons, we shall subject it to post-harvesting processes. That includes deflation of the cocoon and removing the pupa inside, so that we use the remaining part of it for producing the thread.
Today, Newton Owino owns around 500,000 mulberry trees planted over 5 acres. Many of the farmers in the region are following his example. In a bid to find a profitable crop to sustain their livelihood, they are ditching traditional cash crops such as coffee, maize, or sugarcane.
We have been working to develop technologies for the silk so that we can give farmers the seeds and have an appropriate market and regulations for silk. Therefore, we are thinking about having farmers in groups, or what we call in sericulture villages, where they can have a common collection center for the cocoons. And we are linking farmers with the markets.
Kenya's annual silk production amounts to approximately 2 metric tons of dried cocoons, but the potential is far greater. The mulberry trees, whose leaves the worms eat, are drought-tolerant and resistant to the cold. Muo Kasina says the rearing of silkworms for production of raw silk, or sericulture, is becoming increasingly popular as a result.
We have potential for silk in the country, and in countries where it is hugely done, is getting down. The production is lowering. In China, it has more or less completely reduced in Japan. And in India, India is doing well with the silk. So we feel that Kenya can contribute to global silk demand.
Silk is also used in the manufacture of skin products, contact lenses, soaps, and woven organic products. The National Sericulture Research Center is currently offering farmers subsidies, plants, and mulberry cuttings at very subsidized rates. And with the help of international investors, they are also working to train farmers and help them identify markets.
100 years ago, Japan had been the largest silk exporter. And after that, we studied a lot of sericulture and silk. So now we have high technology of silk and the sericulture, but we can't use it because of the Japan is too developed, and also the climate. The climate in the Kenya is much better than Japan to sericulture.
And by adapting to the changing climatic conditions, small-scale silk farmers like Newton Owino have found a way of sustaining their livelihoods.
According to the World Health Organization, about 2.2 billion people around the world don't have access to safe drinking water. One region particularly hard hit is Sub-Saharan Africa. There, many people can only dream of having running water in or anywhere near their homes.
And it is for that very reason that after many years abroad, engineer Fekadu Aleka returned to his native Ethiopia to install water taps in the rural communities. In recognition of his outstanding service, he was awarded an international prize earlier this year.
Like many people in rural Ethiopia, this mother of 7 doesn't have a water tap in her home. Until recently, she and her family had to fetch their water from far away. But now a water tap has been installed on a field just 1 minute away from where they live.
In the morning we fetched water and then we would go again in the evening, but last year we started using the water nearby. It's cleaner and it's improved our overall hygiene.
In this region, 250 kilometers west of Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa, 19 new water points have been installed. They provide locals with access to a reliable supply of clean water. The project was initiated by mechanical engineer Fikado Aleka. He spent 16 years in Germany as a political refugee, but returned to Ethiopia to contribute to his country's development and nature conservation efforts.
I was involved in the political activities of the 1970s. I had a problem with the regime, and then I left the country and I came to Germany as a refugee. As I was about to finish the education, there was a regime change in Ethiopia. Now I thought it's a time to go home and to help the people, because if we educated people remain outside the country, nobody will help the country.
There are now fewer cases of worms and bacterial infections thanks to the new system. It benefits not only humans, but cattle too.
We used to fetch water in the mud and we had many problems. Now water is accessible close to our home and we've regained our health and the health of our children too.
The burden of fetching water is often carried by children, and particularly girls. This girl does it about 3 times every day. Reducing the walking distances to water points improves the lives of children in many ways.
If children are going to a distant place to fetch water, they don't have much time to do their homeworks and they will not be good in the school. We send also girls to a distant place to fetch water, and they will be abused by men when they go far from their home.
Another problem is logging. Trees are felled for firewood or to make way for new fields. The deforestation is a cause for concern.
You see around the mountains, there was a forest before 40 years.
With no trees to secure the soil, it washes away with the seasonal rains. This phenomenon, called erosion, stops the water from being kept in the ground. To tackle the threat of erosion, the government has the villagers dig trenches in the fields.
When it rains, the water from the fields above will flow into trenches. This will prevent soil erosion and also reduce drought.
On Mount Entoto, close to Addis Ababa, the terracing technique has already borne fruit. This natural spring was first discovered by clergymen working for Emperor Menelik in the late 19th century. It was rehabilitated by Fikado Aleka's team and now provides more water than ever.
We still have to stand in line, but the amount of water has increased a lot. Before, the water wasn't clean. Wild animals, cattle, and humans were all using it together.
These young indigenous trees were also planted by the community during the last rainy season, in part to counter the adverse effects of the eucalyptus tree, which flourishes here.
Mainly introduced a fast-growing tree from Australia, the eucalyptus tree, but the eucalyptus tree is draining much water from the groundwater. We have submitted an application to remove this one and replace it by indigenous trees so we can have more water.
Even if drought and deforestation continue to hamper access to water in rural areas, Fikado Aleka has managed to improve the water supply for more than 55,000 people in Ethiopia.
I'm afraid we've run out of time for today. We hope the show has given you some useful information on how our digital world does have some positive benefits for both people and the environment. Wishing you good health in these difficult times. Do take care, and goodbye for now from me, Neo Taigbe, in Lagos, Nigeria.
And from me, Sandra Twinovideo here in Kampala. Please do join us once again next week for another edition of Eco Africa. In the meantime, you can visit our website and social media channels. All the best to you and try to stay safe. Goodbye.
No.